Too late.
Several clergy in Russia.
Was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the Kaliningrad.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guys? Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, and welcome to the latest edition of Views on the News. Yes, I know it said Global Atheist News Review, but we have changed the name. Today, we have a new member of our panel. Welcome to Matthew Taylor, who's in Somerset.
Hello, folks.
We have our regular Dr. Ty from Tennessee, our regular David Orenstein from Manhattan, and our semi-regular Dread Pyrate Higgs, who's in northern British Columbia at the moment. Welcome, guys. And thank you very much for coming along to this show. Now, we've had some very interesting stuff to report to you this week. The Vatican. This puzzled me. I hope you can explain. The Vatican announced some time ago that there was going to be a synod on synodality, and it would go in phases, starting with a diocesan phase from October 21 to April 22. Then it would go in a continental phase from September 22 to March 23. And it's about to start is the universal phase, which will begin with the 16th Ordinary General Assembly of the Synod of Bishops at the Vatican in October 2023. In an address to Catholics in the Diocese of Rome, Pope Francis stressed the significance of the diocesan phase of the synodal process. He said, to return to the synodal process, the diocesan phase is very important since it involves listening to all the baptized, the subject of the infallible sensus fidei incredendo, full stop. So if that makes more sense to you than it does to me, I'll be very pleased to hear about it.
I'm just happy. I'm happy that I don't know. I'm happy that I don't know anything about any of these terms, nor have any knowing about them.
Yeah.
But I do recommend that they check their diagnosis phases synodal integers, because those are typically always off, and you want to make sure they're well calibrated.
As you noticed, I can't even say the words. Dread, what were you going to say?
I'm incredendo.
As long as you're not, what is it? In flagrante delicando.
See, the only problem is it's a Roman Catholic church, and they're still weighing the fact that they invented Latin above everybody. So it's like, we can still make words. It's like, we have enough words. We have enough words.
It sounded like a little bit of sesquipedolia verbis.
Yes, it did, didn't it? Yes. The important thing about this is they're listening. They're listening to all the baptized. And they've never done that before in 2,000 years of Roman Catholicism. They've never listened. They've always dispensed rules. And they've never asked people anything.
Well, I was baptized at the age of 9. So does that mean they will listen to my voice if I have an opinion to pass on?
Probably, because my understanding is that you can never escape from Roman Catholicism. There's no I want out clause. You're always in there. So if you entered Roman Catholicism...
I was probably an evil Protestant, so that probably doesn't count. Does it?
Oh, no, sorry, you won't count. You don't really exist.
You're a heretic whether you believe or not.
Yes.
So I checked up because I wanted to know what this was all about, and I found a definition. So listen to this. The principle of synodality is defined specifically as the action of the Spirit in the communion of the body of the Christ and in the missionary journey of the people of God. See, it's very clear, isn't it?
You know, they've been getting things wrong from from the heliocentric position of the Earth to the idea that in 1123 that priests can't get married. You know, it's been 1,000, 2,000 years of getting things wrong, both from a scientific point of view, from a moral point of view. Why is anyone paying attention?
Yeah.
Good question.
The only reason people are paying attention because they're still here, they're still adapting, and frankly, trying to play a role in the world.
That's it, exactly. It's not a money play. They don't care. I mean, it's an immensely lucrative operation. There's no operating, there's no skews, the buildings are already existing. They're making lots of money with very little overhead, right? But the issue is the power play.
Right.
You see culturally that people are changing and they need to realign. And typically big institutions like this only change when there's a threat to their power. So we can only anticipate the new narrative that they'll come out with.
Right.
Yeah, and Ty, I would further say that it's a threat to their power where they are not able to simply muscle their way through it.
Yeah, it's really hard to do a crusade on ChatGPT and stuff like that, right? It's just like, what's our go-tos here? How do we stop AI?
Yeah. Well, with the Jesuit in charge, it's the more intellectual fascism of organized belief rather than the dogmatic. Although the dogmatic is still there.
Well, actually, you know what?
Wrapped in a different package.
Yeah.
I think ChatGPT is probably the way to go with this one. Rather than put loads of comments out to all of the baptized, just ask ChatGPT to give a harmonious comment on what all the baptized will say, and there's the answer.
Yeah, it's got to be right. Absolutely. Well, now, Tercia
it'll be suitably vague anyway.
Yes, it will. That's true. Everything to all men. So Tercia can't make it today, obviously. I think she's got a nasty outbreak of load shedding, but I've got her in the can. Watch this.
I'm coming to you from a suitably lit South Africa. The lighting suits the mood, and it concerns the Anglican Church of Southern Africa that has scrapped a proposal to allow its clergy to bless same-sex unions, while also reaffirming its outright rejection of same-sex marriage. The report comes from Mamba Online. Meeting in Gauteng from 27 February to 3 March, the bishops of the Anglican Church of Southern Africa, the ACSA, had extensive discussions on the proposal submitted by the Archbishop's Commission on Human Sexuality. The proposal would have permitted same-sex blessings to be performed in parishes and dioceses where both the priest and the congregation agreed. It would have exempted any diocese, parish and priest from having to perform these blessings if they did not wish to do so. The bishops debated the issue over 4 sessions, described as quietly impassioned but respectful. On one side, bishops expressed their unhappiness that faithful Anglicans denied the Church's blessing of their loving, faithful, monogamous, committed same-sex partnerships. Opposing bishops argued that the Church must hold true to Scripture and upholding tradition as it has been received down the ages, and should resist efforts to conform to the world.
Good afternoon, John and the Free Thought audience. Coming to you from the glorious V&A waterfront in Cape Town today to tell the sad story of Pastor Siva Moodley. This is brought to you by the BBC correspondent Solomon Izan Ashoms, and it goes as follows. Pastor Siva Moodley was buried yesterday after 579 days in the mortuary. He hasn't been buried before because his family believed he was going to be resurrected, and they insisted on keeping his body in the mortuary. His wife, son David and daughter Kat weren't there at the cemetery when he was buried. He was going to be buried like a pauper until his nephew went to court to claim the body. So let's see if his resurrection can happen from underground, because it hasn't happened over a period of 579 days while the corpse was in the mortuary. Back to the studio.
So there you are, guys. There's things happening in South Africa. First of all, the Anglicans are splitting over the marriage of gays and blessings of gay marriages. And then there's this pastor whose family, he died, and his family wouldn't let go of the body because they were certain that he was going to resurrect. So he's been kept on ice for 579 days, and finally they've given up hope and they've put him underground. What do you think of all that?
Well, I'd have thought 3 days would have probably been the reasonable cutoff for that, isn't it?
The Catholic Church should at some point apply for the CSI prize, which is the carry on from the Randy Foundation, where I think they've elevated it to $500,000 now for delivering proof of any kind of a supernatural or miraculous occurrence. So, maybe they're hoping to cash in on that.
There you go. David, as an anthropologist,
yes,
what do you think about the prospect of resurrection?
Well, look, I mean, it's found in a lot of different religions, and you can go through many states of existence and non-existence, and you find it in the Abrahamic religions as well as you find it in ideas of reincarnation. You have it in terms of where the soul may go if it doesn't go directly to heaven or hell. If a theology or a philosophy has it, you might wind up in a form of purgatory. To me, this is just, wish fulfillment and magical thinking, as all belief in the soul is. And you find it, look, Neanderthals were burying their dead with artifacts with an idea that you go to a next life. The earliest anatomically modern version of this was about 78,000 years ago. They found a child who was about 78 in Kenya who was intentionally buried. So the idea of a spirit life is very old. But how it is that we view it comes down to spirituality, doctrine, enculturation. You can believe in the divine, you don't have to believe in the divine. It's all made up, it's all a human construct.
It's all wishful thinking.
It's all wishful thinking. It's wish fulfillment. In my mind, with this stuff in the 21st century, I see it as Catholics gone wild. Just going back to these ideas that really don't serve a purpose, because we have science to be able to show us a much more comforting view of the world if you want to accept the material world.
So I take it that none of your fossils have ever resurrected then?
They better not.
There's a T-Rex in the loose in the museum.
That's right, exactly. I might have something come fight at me, but no, fortunately, no.
There's a really interesting angle here, and it's so much that the work that people do to remember or commemorate someone's death or passing on, it's typically done in service of the people who survive and want to recognize the loss that they're going through. Right. But in this case, they kept that body in the morgue deliberately for the interests of that body, right? Yeah. They were waiting for that body to resurrect. And I can't help but fault them for the amount of compassion, despite it being misinformed, the sincerity maybe of the motion to try to maintain that body there. And if anything, that tells me a lot about the nature of the people who tend to believe these dogmas. Like, these are These are people who are deeply compassionate, very interested in the welfare of other people, even after they die. And if given the opportunity to operate under a higher standard of evidence, would only continue to benefit that compassion that they have for the departed to other people as well. And I don't think there's anything separating that human quality. But I do feel like religion tends to take that expense that they have and lay it on dead people when it could have been elsewhere.
Yeah,
It's a shame that they have gone through that much time and effort for a dead body with no sort of return.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point there. And extending that idea of compassion, the family that are involved in that, this must have been, realistically speaking, quite a traumatic experience for them as well. And having gone through all this time, if they, on the assumption that they genuinely believe this resurrection was going to happen, they're now faced with the prospect of having to come to terms with that belief being either inappropriate or badly informed or wherever that came from, and they're going to have to reshift their mental focus, reshift where they believe. So it might cause some deep questioning of some core assumptions that they hold, and that could be genuinely quite traumatic for the immediate family. And I think that is a concern, and we should be concerned about the effect of religion on people like this.
Right. Yeah. Also, like, we're on the other side of the planet, and we're talking about this in like a tongue-in-cheek sort of way. Like, the neighbors or maybe some other place that's nearby that they have access to are knowing that they're talking about this, and maybe they feel embarrassed, and there might be a sort of blowback effect where they're like, well, the next person who dies in our family is going to stay in the morgue for 1,000 days. And it's just
and
a question
I know one person who would benefit from that. It's the Undertaker. And
right.
Think of the cost of this. How much did it cost to keep that freezer going? Nearly 2 years.
Right. There's the social aspect, there's the financial aspect, and of course the welfare of people, because they're not going to have anything resolved until they start asking themselves some critical questions.
Yeah.
But after you keep a body in the morgue for 500 days, there's sort of like an ego statement there. I imagine it would happen around the first year at least, right?
You know what they call that, Ty?
What would I call that?
It's called the sunk cost fallacy.
Yes.
We've done it this long.
Yes.
We might as well keep on doing it because it may happen.
And that's how religions get started, if anything, not how they go away. So, like, we need to make sure people can hold themselves to a higher standard so that they immediately see these things, see they're not in their best interest, and evolve into a higher standard.
Right. And we see this also why we're still waiting around for the resurrection of Christ, right? I mean, if you keep it extending it, you know, you're waiting around 2,000. What's 2,000 years compared to eternity if you're a believer? You know, and every year somebody says, all the signs are there. It's going to happen today or a month.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it's really impressive if they've had a freezer going for 2,000 years with units.
Well, I was just going to say that. The beneficiary in this case is not the Undertaker or the owner of the mortuary, but the priests and pastors. And Dred, thank you for that. I've got the logical fallacies up on my wall here. I don't have the sunk cost one.
The sunk cost fallacy. There is another name for it. I just can't remember what it is.
Is gambler's fallacy or something like that.
Is that the one where you keep sinking the basketball and you think that because you've sunk it 5 times before that you're going to always sink the basketball? Is that?
No, it's sort of like you keep investing in the return.
You've invested so much money into something.
Yeah.
I see.
It's like the for a penny and for a pound.
Right.
The gambler's fallacy, is it that?
Yeah, it's basically when
you expect lottery numbers to come up eventually, when in fact the chances or the odds of any lottery numbers coming up are exactly the same every time. And that's why in some cases where a lottery is won with a certain set of numbers and the very next draw gets the same set, people freak out and think there's something going on. In fact, it's the law of large numbers, and that's where the gambler's fallacy comes in.
They made a movie off of sunk cost fallacy. It's called National Lampoon's Vacation. It stars Chevy Chase. I don't know if you guys seen it.
Oh, interesting.
It's one bad vacation, and just, the terrible things keep happening, but they keep trying to get there because they say, we already had all this stuff happen. We might as well
I think
I have to get to Wally World.
I've
That's
had the
the
misfortune of seeing that movie when it was on
I
TV.
guarantee you will have a good time. And then they have
Yeah.
their dead grandma on the roof. And
Yeah.
Is
Go on
that the one where
behind
they
the
have an
station
unfortunate incident in an RV?
yes, yeah,
Yes,
close
yes.
to it. Yeah, similar.
That's right. That's the one. Yeah. Okay, moving on. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis are protesting in Israel about their fundamentalist government's judicial plans. Because Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu proposes to curb the power of the courts. And of course, opponents think that's a threat to democracy. Let me just show you how many of them have been protesting in Tel Aviv. Take a look at this.
Well, this is the Ayalon Highway. It's the main road that runs north-south in Tel Aviv. You can see the protesters. They breached the road. Police have been trying to stop them. You can now see mounted police, Israeli security forces heading towards the protesters. This is exactly what Israel's far-right police minister said he wouldn't allow. He calls these people anarchists. They say they're fighting for democracy. They came down here, jumped over the fence. We followed them over as we were filming. They got onto the road and blocked it. And we're just going to stop here, and you can see the mounted police here. Now we watched as the mounted police came along the street. The protesters dug in. Dozens of them were sitting on the road. And at that point, they pushed them back.
Tel Aviv police chief Amichai Eshed walked with the protesters in uniform and got applause. But the next day, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, he of the most right wing of right wings, said he was going to transfer Mr. Eshed to head a training division.
Yeah.
Imagine how bold that person who was waving the color pride flag was.
Oh yeah. Did you see that?
Oh, I didn't spot that.
That actually that caused me to gasp.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's good that people who are politically conscious and are fighting against the kind of fascism, that creeping fascism that we've found in the United States, and we're finding in all of the quote unquote secular democracies around the world. The elite will always call people like this Antifa, or they'll come up with some other name, and the reality is that they're fighting for the ideals of democracy. There's nothing wrong with that. We saw it after the George Floyd protest. We saw it with the Black Lives Matter movement. We've seen it earlier in the 1960s and in the women's rights movement. Let's hope that there are enough people of conscience in Israel and everywhere else where we can continue to have a secular world.
And
Yeah,
also
well, these riots have been going on ever since the new government came into power, haven't they? Yeah. Ty, you're going to say?
Don't be noteful about authoritarians will use labels to dismiss groups of people with, sincere and genuine points of concern and criticism for how they're being governed. And so when there's a bunch of people in the street, oh, those are anarchists.
Right.
Just forget about it. And I see it. We do the same thing in the U.S. too. I just want to make the point. Be aware when anyone uses a label to classify a group of people that seem to have a statement to make that is against the status quo of how things are done.
Right.
When anyone's using that, it's typically a way to make you compartmentalize them and dismiss their concern.
Right.
That's how you form the out groups, right?
That's right. It's how you dehumanize a group of people so you can actually take away their rights. It used to be call them commies, call them Pecos, call them Reds. Now it's Antifa. Where when you think about, I'm an anti-fascist. I think everybody on this call is an anti. nobody
Yeah.
here is approving of fascism. So, I'm on the side of people who want to see secular democracy continue. I don't want to live in a theocracy.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Unless it's pastafarian. That's just
right. Exactly. Here.
I'd probably be the one that I would allow to at least go to the interview table. Of all the ones that are out there, I'd be like, okay. Pasta's pretty good.
Yes.
We're all
Much
about
better
sharing.
than pizza.
At least my hairstyle is colander friendly, so I'm cool with that.
Now, you may remember that in November 2021, some people were flown from Pakistan to the UK, and they were flown because, the story went, they were women football players who had played for the national team, and they were under threat because the Taliban, which had recently taken control of Afghanistan, viewed football as un-Islamic, or any type of sport, especially female, as un-Islamic. Now, we granted them visas here, but apparently some of them were cheating. While the names and other identity details are genuine, the description of the principal applicants as national players or members of a regional team appears to have been false. Now, that's as it may, but you imagine that back home in Afghanistan, there's resentment among the genuine women football players who are still there. So watch this rather horrifying video.
We used to serve our country. We served our country for sport. People who had no affiliation with football left, but we are here. We cannot do anything. I can't even go out without my husband. We are like slaves. They took away our rights. Please help. We are real sport people. Look at me. I was free. I was a free woman. Look at my chadari, my veil. I can't even walk with this veil. I cannot. Look at me, women around the world. I'm a woman like you. Many are asking why I'm left behind, as I'm a real footballer. I'm living in hiding, and I can't live freely. I don't want to stay alive. I want to die. I'm only alive for my child.
That's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, the most notable thing to mention is it is easy to at least immediately villainize the false football players, but they are not the villains in this story.
No.
They are, if anything, the most lucky and clever people to get out of a terrible situation. And it's the arbitrators of the terrible situation that are the ones that fall for this whole mess. And obviously my sympathy goes out to the people who are left behind, because whenever you have a refugee situation, it's never a clean process. There's going to be people behind, families left behind, marriage couples will split apart, and just for the sake of one to traverse or get smuggled and then hopefully sponsor their spouse to get over it. Breaks apart families. It's a very traumatic experience. And so it's a shame to see this. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I've got another sad one for you, I'm afraid.
I'll say it one more time too. Also, I would also throw this out too. What's the right word in English terms? Do you say bully, or do you say job well done? Like, what's the proper word of saying, like, hey, good job on the people who did help to get the false footballers as well out of Afghanistan, who were able to speak up and coordinate to leave a bad situation too. That didn't happen by happenstance. That was
no.
I had to have taken through a lot of risks. So good on them to be able to figure that out.
My only concern in a scenario like that is, did somebody manipulate that situation to get a favoured daughter out so that they could get a Western education from a situation in which they weren't genuinely in danger? Did somebody senior manipulate that situation to help their own children? So that would be my concern about going there. But on the assumption that that's not the case, I'm happy for those that got out, but yes, there's always people who are left behind, and I'm deeply concerned for them too.
Yeah, obviously cutting in line would suck, but I'd say good for any person to get out of a situation like that. The alternative is terrible.
Yeah. Well, so as I said, I'm sorry, I've got another not very nice video to show you. Just a clip, 1 minute long, but it's from a female, or a collection of female Israeli soldiers who are telling the truth about what they've witnessed their own army doing to Palestinians. Watch this.
כאילו לא קיימים. זה לקחת עצורים ולחבוט עליהם סיגריה, זה לקחת עצורים ולא לתת להם מים ואוכל ימים שלמים, לקחת עצורים ולהתעלל בהם במכות. למשל סתם לקשור באזיקונים ולשים פלנלית על העיניים. כאילו זה הנורמלי שיש לך 6 או 7 גברים שיושבים כפותים על רצפה ולא רואים, ובשיא הקור בחורף, זה היה כאילו מחזה רגיל. לא היה גבול. פשוט לא היה גבול, היינו יכולים לעשות מה שאנחנו רוצים, מה שמתחשק לנו.
הבדיחה שמאוד אהבו לעשות, זה שמגיע פלסטיני, הוא מראה לך את האישור העסקה שלו, אז אתה לוקח, מחליף למטה עם אישור העסקה אחר קבוע, מראה לו ככה שקראת לו את האישור.
אם אתה עושה ליווי עצורים ולא הרבצת לעצורים, או לא התעללת בהם, או נתת להם אוכל, או נתת להם מים ושתייה, או השתדלת לא לייבש אותם בשמש, כל המקומות האלה, אז כאילו, מה, זה מה שעשית?
Well, there you are, guys. I give you 5 minutes to react to that because I've got to go to a Mother's Day meal.
Yeah.
Have yourself a Disney. I'm not surprised by that. I'm horrified by it, but not surprised. I think over the last couple of years, it's become more and more obvious to the rest of the world that Israel is very much got dirty hands in this situation.
Yeah.
And I'm really disappointed by this news, but sadly not overly surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just, I mean, it's human rights violations, and it's clear that it's so terribly wrong and so dehumanizing. Makes you sick.
Absolutely. It's not a very nice note to end on, is it, guys? But there you go. Thank you very much for being part of this show. Say goodbye. I'm going to play the outro.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Several clergy in
Russell was the Pope appealing for peace, or was he praying for peace?
And the same applies to the Kali Grad.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what do you have to say about that, guy?